Welcome to our March overview. I am so excited to dive into March and really give you a full update and full overview of what is to come for your March curriculum. If you did watch spring planning, you know that you'll probably be doing a little bit of shuffling for spring and kind of getting some April weeks at the end of March for Easter, but I am going to go through March week by week so that once you get to those weeks, you know exactly what to do. So of course this will be clipped out so you can watch week by week, but I'm going to go from front to back through March in order as it is in the book, and then you can refer to that whenever you end up doing those weeks. All right, so our first part of our March overview is our beautiful March chalkboard, but pay attention because I know y'all have some sharp children who love to notice things, and there's some story to this March chalkboard, so some things that you are going to want to keep in mind. So beautiful March chalkboard, of course, features Lady Spring, who has come to wake the flowers by playing her flute. Now I just love this depiction that Nathaniel did of Lady Spring. He actually lived in Japan for a few years, and so when we were thinking about personifying these seasonal noble characters, he got to see just how beautifully Japan celebrates and honors spring with the Sakura Blossom Festival. So it felt very fitting to honor that culture in this way and have Lady Spring be this beautiful Japanese geisha, and I think she is just lovely. So she is gorgeous, and of course we have the rainbow, the beautiful clouds and crocuses and all of this beautiful scene. But you will notice that if you're looking for some of your favorite characters, especially fairies, you might notice a few differences. So this chalkboard was done back in, I think, our first year when stories were still kind of coming together. This was still when the stories that Nathaniel was writing were just being told to our little classroom. They hadn't really been fully written yet. We were really still figuring out who these fairies were going to be and what their names were going to be and what colors they were going to be. And so you'll see this is kind of a fun kind of look at the journey that we've had and how things have changed. So there are a few differences between what you'll see depicted here and the characters that have kind of been solidified in the stories. And so you'll see some differences. So I'll explain those so that your children won't have to be confused. Eventually, he does hope to update this chalkboard and make those adjustments, but of course we've been focused on finishing summer and finishing all of these things. So for now, this has been what it is, but I'll kind of take you through a little tour of some of those details. So some of the fairies, of course, are accurate. So a great little example here, we have Petty Palm with Sapphire and Ruby. These are just as they are written in the stories. We also have Pearl and Puddle Bloom here, beautiful Pearl. A little fun fact, back when this was drawn, Pearl's name, we had her actually as Madame Butterfly before she got her name as Pearl, but we ended up settling on Pearl, which we just love. So that's another little backstory there. You have Rudabug here climbing the tree up to Petty Palm's house. You have Citrine in all of her loveliness here, and she is exactly as she is in our final stories. And Amber here. Amethyst is here. We did end up darkening her hair a little bit, but she is still the purple fairy right here, so that's pretty close to accurate. Just a small detail here, but the main differences you'll see are these two fairies up here, and then of course the sky, which I'll get to. We our first kind of round of fairies, we kind of thought we were going to go towards more the fairies being representative of the colors of flowers. So you won't find emerald here, so that's why emerald is not here, and why this little white fairy is here. But then we ended up switching to the colors of the rainbow, so we decided to add green and not have white, and Pearl kind of represents both white and indigo. So this little fairy did not make it into the final fairies, and you won't see emerald here. And then up here we have our pink fairy, of course, which you know of now. We have our pink fairy is our little toddler pixie, Tourmaline, and this was before, this was when our daughter was like a baby, so she wasn't really a toddler yet. By the next year, she had become this sweet little toddler, and we were like, this pink fairy needs to be a pink little toddler pixie. And so then Tourmaline from then on has been based on our own daughter, and you'll see she takes a central role in some of the March stories, which are very sweet and hilarious. But pink fairy right there is kind of a grown-up pink fairy instead of our sweet little pixie Tourmaline. And then our leprechaun, you actually will not find the leprechaun in our stories. Again, this was kind of an idea of what would happen if a leprechaun visited Wondergarten, but as we continued to build the world, it just kind of didn't make sense, and it kind of felt like this random forced thing, and we just didn't love how those storylines were playing out. So there is no leprechaun in the March stories. Of course, if you want to make up your own little story of if a leprechaun visited Wondergarten, you're more than welcome to do that, but the leprechaun did not make it in our final stories, and so eventually we'll update this. But you do, in the Colorful Beard story, get a picture of Rudabug, of course our green gnome, with an orange beard, which is kind of a nod to the leprechaun. So that is that kind of the differences we have. We still have some beautiful representations of March here and some of our beloved characters, but some differences, especially in the fairies and of course the leprechaun. So if you have curious children looking for emerald or looking for pixie tourmaline, that is what you'll find. And if they're curious about where the leprechaun is in the stories, that is why he is not there. So that is our overview of our March chalkboard. Otherwise, it is just gorgeous. And again, one day I'm sure Nathaniel will give us an update, but for now, it's kind of iconic and it is lovely. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and dive into March, which begins with Rainbow Week. So in March, we have Rainbow Week, Clover Week, Potato Week, and the Spring Festival. And of course, the excitement of beginning our March curriculum is the return of the fairies in Rainbow Week. So if you are just joining us for March and for spring, back in autumn, we bid farewell to the fairies because they kind of mimic the birds and butterflies who migrate. So we bid farewell to the fairies in autumn, and they return at the first rainbow of spring. So Rainbow Week, we get to greet the fairies, which is very, very exciting, and kicks off lovely, lovely stories. All right, so Rainbow Week, I will get right to it with diving into our stories. Any questions so far on anything? I know I've just kind of covered products and Chalkboard, but just want to make sure my chat box is loading here properly before I start diving into our stories. All right, Return of the Fairies. So we begin with a little bit of a storm, Brother Wind and Sister Rain, and then Father Sun parts the clouds and we see this beautiful rainbow. And I think Hamilton, Petty Palm and Hamilton go to chase the rainbow. And then, of course, before they get to the end of the rainbow, it dissipates. But then the fairies return. So they see the fairies coming. And the beautiful little verse is, at the first rainbow of spring, the fairies return to dance and sing. So Pearl and her ring of fairies are greeted back in Wondergarten, and it is a beautiful reintroduction. And then Pearl gets to actually really fully introduce each one of her fairies with the fairies are here. And this is a really sweet story, really celebratory story. The beginning, we have this song, End of the Rainbow, and this is a really sweet one, and this one often makes me cry because it can just be a sweet, innocent song of the wonder of the rainbow and what's at the end of the rainbow. But sometimes we've also used this idea of the rainbow to help children understand when someone we love passes or when a new baby's born. So this idea of going over the rainbow, and even last year, my grandmother had actually passed right on this week, and there was a rainbow, and so I got to use that to help my children understand that great grandma had gone over the rainbow. So we've used this for our children, and it's really a gentle way to help them understand that if you need to. Of course, it can also just be pure innocent wonder. It could be a pot of gold. It could be whatever you want. So it's one of those songs that can mean what you need it to mean in that moment. But when you listen to it, sometimes it just makes me tear up. It is beautiful, though. Really, really beautiful story. And then the fairies are here. This is a very exciting, the fairies are here, the fairies have come, and then you get a full introduction of each name and color of the fairies, which is really, really sweet. So here you really get to know who are the fairies of Wondergarten, introduced by Pearl. And now my recommendation, especially if you're new, yes, I see some teary faces, yes. If you are newer for just joining in March, my recommendation for circle time, because we get involved with the songs and stories in the circle time portion of our day, I like to recommend choose the first verse of one song, because usually in each week we have a few songs for you to choose from, but sometimes it can be, what do I do with all of these songs in circle time? Choose the first verse of one song and focus on that, learn those words. Of course, you can enjoy all the music of that week through listening, through streaming, Yodo, or CDs, but if you're really focusing in on circle time, choose which song you want to focus on, whether you want to focus on rainbow or fairies, and focus on the first verse of one song. And that really breaks it down in a way that child can really begin to soak in that song. You can repeat that and sing that with them. So you can choose either, or of course it is Rainbow Week, so you might want to focus on rainbow, but if you have a fairy lover, you might want to focus on fairies as well. I know some people, another thing that I will mention, some people like to wait to listen to the songs until that week. So some people like to listen to the albums on shuffle and you can kind of get a preview of what's to come. But another way you can also do it is waiting for that week. And then, especially if you wait till the audiobooks and hearing the songs in the audiobooks, I feel like that's where you get the songs in their full glory with Nathaniel singing as the gnomes. And yes, I do have a question here. Are you going to be in the audiobooks as the fairies? Yes, indeed. So I will be joining Nathaniel here very soon to get in here singing and narrating as many of the fairies. So that is going to be a lot of fun. All right, so end of the rainbow and the fairies are here. Choose your favorite, reduce it down to just a portion that you feel like you can remember and recite to your child and enjoy those songs this week. All right, so our first morning activity of spring, modeling beeswax. Now, if you were here for autumn and winter, you probably remember our rhythm of usually that first morning we start with Play-Doh, and that is a modeling activity, kind of a great pre-writing activity. It's strengthening their hands, but Play-Doh is nice and pliable. Now that we're heading into the second half of the year, I'm going to offer and suggest kind of the next step. Now, this is an optional if you have a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, still a little one, or if this is your first time, you could still opt to begin your week with Play-Doh. But if they've done a lot of Play-Doh and you feel like they're ready for the next step, I will suggest modeling beeswax. It is definitely a different experience and sometimes can feel super hard, but you'll want to warm that up either in your hands or sometimes I've even put it, I have a proofing setting on my oven that keeps my oven around 95 degrees. I'll even put the beeswax in there to kind of warm it up. So they'll have to work their hands a little more, but again, it's amazing to see what they can create with different mediums. So this is, again, a wonderful pre-writing activity. They're going to be strengthening their hands even more. It's great modeling and great creativity. So your choice, whether you want to just kind of go back to a Play-Doh, but if you'd like to get some colors here, of course, more colorful spring, fairies are returning, and beeswax feels like so perfect for spring. So if you'd like to give modeling beeswax a try, definitely go ahead. It can be a lot of fun. Then our main lesson for Living Arts Day, which is our life skills day, is window washing, but this is a really fun way to spin it. So you see here, if you have a set of window crayons, I like to draw a rainbow on the window and make a beautiful scene coming through the window. And then the activity is let's wash it off. Now with window crayons, there's a few ways you can approach this. Often I like to give them a spray bottle and a rag and just kind of let them enjoy the process of washing. But you'll notice that sometimes it just feels like the window crayons are just smearing around. So quick tip to when you're ready to finally fully clean off, window crayons clean best if you get a sopping wet rag and just fully like wipe it down and then come with a dry rag and it comes right off. If you use kind of that damp-ish rag, it can feel like it just smears around forever. So make a nice scene, let them wash it off, and then repeat. Then give them the crayons, see what they create. So it's this lovely kind of looping activity of free creation drawing and then the life skill of cleaning and washing. Because of course, if you're going to wash windows, you need something to clean, right? So it is a great way to get them cleaning and then get them creating and as many times as you'd like. All right, I feel like I was a little choppy there. So window washing, my kids love this activity. All right, day 2, baking day morning is when we tend to do our kind of little handwork style crafts. We'll be making a rainbow ribbon wand. This is lovely, simple, but a really sweet way for the child to make their own toy, something that they can actually play with. And then I love using these ribbons in circle time with the rainbow song and kind of using those to create rainbows as we sing that song in circle time. So we do have a rainbow wand kit in our supply kits, but if you want to just use just a simple wooden dowel. This is also a great chance for some cutting practice. If you have a spool of ribbon, they can cut that off. And then of course, the main kind of activity part here is them beginning to tie their ribbon on. So this is a great chance to slow down and really just show them how to tie. Now with a little one, I would probably fold it over and have them just pull out that little piece and kind of work together on tying with them. But the older one, it's a great tying practice. Now, the end, either you could use a kind of a mallet style dowel with the little wooden ball at the end so the ribbons don't fly off. But if you don't have that, if you have some leftover candle rolling beeswax, you can also warm that up, or modeling beeswax, and just put that on. You can kind of see here in this picture, this little nub here is just a bit of beeswax. So you can use a bit of beeswax or even tape, something just to make sure that those ribbons don't fly off once they get into their wand yielding. So really, really sweet one. But of course, guide your children to make sure these don't end up in other children's faces, right? A question on if these will be restocked in the shop. Yes, I'm sure they will be. I know our shop team is working on making sure everything for spring is coming up. Oh, I just realized I totally forgot my pause. Spring sale is next week. I was supposed to remind you guys. All right, cut. Spring sale is next week. I want to make sure you guys remember that next week we are starting our spring ahead sale. I can't believe I forgot to mention this earlier, but February 16th, all through that week, we are having a big sale for everything spring. So we're going to have, this is going to rival Black Friday of all the deals you can have. So if you haven't gotten all your spring supplies, next week is going to be your best chance to do it. If you have a digital copy of spring, this is going to be a great chance to get a hard copy, everything you need before you actually start spring. So yes, don't forget, next week is our spring ahead sale. This is going to be a really great sale. A lot of great spring bundles as well to already start getting ahead for Easter items as well. So look ahead for that. Mark your calendars. Next Monday, February 16th, sale will run all week. All right. Back to planning. This is what happens when I don't look at my notes, guys. All right, back to March. Day 2, baking day. This is where we're gonna do rainbow focaccia, and this is a really, really fun one because it feels like free creation in baking. So you're gonna make your focaccia dough. I like to make this dough the day before and then keep it in the fridge overnight, because making this dough the day of, it can kind of be cumbersome. So I make the dough the day before. So this is, make a little note of your planning. You'll want to start this dough the day before. And your recipe is here, and also take a note on the yield here. So one of this recipe will do kind of 1 9x13 pan, or if you have our child size pans, this recipe will do about 2, they'll fill about 2 of those. So if you have just 2 siblings, that's perfect. But if you have a class, you're gonna want to multiply this recipe by how many pans you're really gonna need. So just take a note of that as far as the yield for this, depending on how many you need. But this one is so fun. You make the dough, get it in their little pans, and then you get oil on the top, and they get to just get their fingers in the top of the focaccia. It's really, really fun. It's just a tactile sensory experience. Just get their fingers to get all those little nubbly bits, and then give them an array of vegetables to, of every color of the rainbow to just create. They can make rainbows, they can make gardens. They're just beautiful. So every color of the rainbow, from peppers and onions and cilantro, anything you want to put on there. And then I like to just sprinkle with it a little bit of salt on top before I bake it in the oven. But they're beautiful, it's delicious, and it's, again, such a fun free creation activity that then they get to eat and enjoy. So then, of course, you'll bake that up, and they're just beautiful and delicious. And this is actually a special one for me because this is actually an activity I did way back when in my LifeWays training, when I was doing my training before all of this happened, before Wondergarten. So this is a little nostalgic for me to think about my training days. So this is a really, really fun one. Of course, we have that gluten-free recipe right after in our second editions, which is so lovely. I know a lot of you have been really enjoying those gluten-free recipes, especially with sun bread. Some of those yeasted breads can be tricky to do with gluten-free, but Jessica Diamond has done such an amazing job making sure all of these are very well adapted for you gluten-free families. And of course, vegan, refined sugar-free, anything you need is always on that next page. So very exciting. Then our painting day is a nice, simple, but lovely kind of rainbow themed painting day. I love this way to use block crayons to make little rainbows. So if you take just one of each color of a block crayon and tape them together, they can just make these beautiful rainbows and color the rainbow. It's lovely. You can also do this with stick crayons. If you only have stick crayons, just tape them together, and they can draw rainbows that way. It's a lot of fun. And then, of course, you guessed it, painting day will be painting with the rainbow. Now, there are 2 ways to do this, depending on what you'd like to do. Kind of the classic Waldorf-y way would be to just offer the 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and for them to see how they can create the entire rainbow with just those 3 colors. So they would paint their red, so you would prepare for wet on wet watercolor. I do have a tutorial, a QR code right there. It'll take you to our YouTube, so you can see how to prepare for wet on wet watercolor, which will really help if you're doing the 3 colors, because it just helps the colors blend on the paper. Paint your red on top and then paint that yellow. It'll overlap with the red a little bit to create the orange. Then you paint the blue right below, overlap with the yellow a little bit to create green. And then if you put a little bit of red on the bottom, then you'll create that purple and indigo, and you'll have the whole rainbow with just 3 colors. So that's one way. Another way, of course, you can just give them an entire rainbow palette and just let them enjoy all the colors of the rainbow and see what they create. So 2 ways: free painting, rainbow themed, however you would like to do it, whatever feels best for your children, and what you think they'll respond best to. All right, so Rainbow Week, it is a lovely start to spring. And of course in March is really when we get the most rainbow weather. Of course, sometimes when we get rainbow weather, when it's rained and then it's sunny, our kids just go on rainbow watch. So it's always really fun. So very sweet week, very sweet story. So exciting to welcome the fairies back and a lot of really beautiful activities. Question here, looking for the build your own March supply kit. Most of the items are out of stock, as I mentioned. Hopefully those will be in stock soon. Our shop manager has actually been out of town for the past few days. So she'll be getting back in this week and hopefully getting all these things back in stock for our spring sale next week. So be sure to check back and be sure to sign up for our newsletter. I know I give a lot of updates here in the community, but our newsletter, email newsletter, is a great place to keep up with updates and sales and lots of great stuff. So be sure to sign up. You can sign up via our website. Our email newsletter is just a really great way to stay in the loop, make sure you're seeing all the new sales, restock announcements, even some things that I miss on the community, because our shop manager is able to let you know right away when things get back in stock. So definitely sign up for our newsletter email newsletter if you're looking for some restock announcements. All right. Clover Week. This is a really fun and funny story and a really, really fun week that I think your children are going to get a hoot out of. So of course, Clover Week, is if you were here for our spring planning or if you watch spring planning, you'll know that Clover Week is kind of the week that we kind of nod to St. Patrick's Day. But of course, you'll notice even with the rainbows and Rainbow Week and potatoes and Potato Week, there's kind of a lot of little nods to Irish culture here for St. Patrick's Day. But Clover Week is when we'll kind of be doing a little bit more of that than the other weeks. So Clover Week is March week 2. Our story this week is The Colorful Beard. This is a hilarious story, honestly, of Rudabug finds a lucky 4-leaf clover, a lucky shamrock, and he is so excited about it. And then our little pink pixie tourmaline comes to snag it out of his hands, and in doing so, turns his beard pink. And Rudabug is slightly horrified. So he has a pink beard. He's like, what do we do? And so the fairies, so the little bit of in the know here of fairies. Fairies have their little wand brushes and they can turn things colors with their colors. So each of them have pixie dust to turn things their color. So Tourmaline, being a little pink pixie, just kind of spills her dust and turns everything pink. And so the fairies then kind of take turns trying to get his beard back to brown. But of course, when the red fairy tries, when Ruby tries, it just turns red and then it just turns yellow. And so it just kind of goes through the rainbow and he's having a heyday running around. And that's where you get this picture of Rudabug panicking, running through the garden as a green gnome with an orange beard. The song for this one is hilarious. And just the whole thing is really funny and really entertaining. So how to make brown. Then Pearl comes, of course, and saves the day and teaches. Then you get a lovely little actual color theory lesson here, because how do you make brown? And so Pearl lays out how you make brown. You kind of get a lesson on complementary colors and how each color across from the color wheel kind of cancels each other out to make brown. So you have this lovely song where she's, oh, dearest fairies, gather round. I'll teach you how to make brown. And then they work together to turn his beard back brown. And he is greatly relieved to have his beard his proper color. So it's a fun, funny story, but also lovely color theory story as well. So if you ever need to make brown, it's a great little song to keep in your head. So our songs this week, we have 2 songs. My Lucky Shamrock. This is a great, of course, kind of St. Patrick's Day song. My Lucky Shamrock. It's a really, really fun one. And then My Beard is Brown, hilarious, but also great color theory lesson as well. I love to sing the fairy part of this. If you listen to the song on the album, you'll hear Rudabug's voice and Pearl's voice, Stanton and Catherine. And then of course in the audiobook, you'll hear Rudabug and Pearl as well. So that'll be a really fun one that'll be a fun one to record. So, but I like to sing this little fairy kind of color lesson while we do the painting this week. So you'll see. Hi, honey. Jumping in the chat. All right, so morning, we're going to do Play-Doh. So last week we did our kind of modeling beeswax, but we are going to come back to Play-Doh. So we're going to do green Play-Doh kind of for our Clover St. Patrick's week. So add a good amount of green in your Play-Doh this week and knead this up to a nice fresh batch of bright green Play-Doh for your Clover week and let them enjoy. Play-Doh is still just, even with my 7-year-olds, everyone loves Play-Doh. So it's fun. Then we have towel folding. I do always love to get some very simple life skill lessons into each season of curriculum. So this, of course, isn't super themed, but it is just a good reminder because don't we all know that the towels don't fold themselves, and week after week we must come back to fold them. So if you were here in our previous seasons, we've done this before with our children, but yet again, we are going to remind our children that we need to come back to some of the most basic chores. So towel folding, do with your children. I always love just slowing down, showing them how to neatly put the corners together, and it is very, very sweet. So fold some towels with your children, nice excuse to slow down. Then day 2, our morning activity, again, kind of when we do our crafts, we are going to do these lovely little Clover garlands, and I'm actually going to show you right now a little bit of a tutorial so you can see how these come together. All right, I'm going to scooch this up. So your first step to make this Clover garland is to get some green felt, and you are going to cut out this shape. You can do this however you'd like. If you'd like to do this kind of in bulk by folding up squares, and then you can fold and round the corner. I might switch to top down so you can see a little better. So we have this little shape, just square at the bottom and 2 little humps. So as you're cutting, again, you can find the way if you want to. I do have some tips here on how to do this kind of in bulk, but really all you need to do is get a square, fold in half, and cut that top here. And then you're going to use your hole punch and punch 4 little holes, ding, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, along the bottom edge here, all right? And then you're going to grab probably one of my favorite tools for early childhood handwork, your blunt tapestry needle. We use this a lot, and thread a green piece of yarn here. And the trick with this is that in a lot of times when you make garlands, you can still kind of adjust where the thing is. When we do this garland, it does tie it in place, so just keep note of that. So to make these, you're just going to thread your blunt needle here at the bottom, just in and out and in and out through those 4. And then we're going to not lose this. We're going to pull this through and we're going to repeat. And you can, of course, choose if you want to do a 3-leaf clover or a 4-leaf clover. Your choice. I gave my children the option and all of them seemed to want to do a lucky 4-leaf clover. So I will do that one. So we're going to just pull these up and kind of position these wherever you'd like it to be on your garland. Of course, this is just a little sample. And just weave in, out, right here. Pull it through. And I'll go ahead and do 4 because why not? It's part of our story that he finds a 4-leaf clover. All right, so 4 here. Then you're just going to tie this together. So I want to make sure if this is where I want this 4-leaf clover, then we're just going to tie this together like so. And this will just bring together our 4-leaf clover. Look at that. Ooh, isn't that lovely? And then of course you can do another one to really lock it in place to make sure it doesn't unravel. And there you have. Easy. So it comes together really easy, really beautifully. Of course, you can do 3 or 4, but very simple. And then, of course, you can repeat however many times to make a garland of whatever length you want. This one's pretty long, so you can do as many as you want to cover whatever window or whatever. But that is how you create a nice, simple little clover garland. Pretty fun. Any questions on that before I move on? Super cute. Yay. Great. It's a very simple one if you know the tricks. All right. Lovely. All right. So let's move on to baking. As I mentioned, kind of our Irish theme week, we're going to be doing Irish soda bread. I love this recipe and I love Irish soda bread. It's so yummy. So this is a really great one. A tip on this one, if you're doing a whole loaf, make sure it's not too tall because sometimes it'll brown a lot, but then the middle will still be kind of doughy. So you want kind of like a flatter loaf. If you're doing smaller, like child-sized loaves, it won't be too much of an issue. But this is something I've run into where I've done a nice like tall loaf and then it just like never finishes baking. So I would suggest a nice flat, not too tall, so that you just want to make sure it gets fully baked. But if you're doing the little ones for the little children, that's also really fun. But the bake time will also depend on how big it is. So look at what you're baking, keep an eye on it, poke it, test it. If it's getting too brown but still feels doughy in the middle, cover it. Just keep an eye on it to make sure it's doing what it needs to. I love to eat this with, we always have fresh strawberries or cheese, especially Irish cheddar cheese or jam. Super yummy, one of my faves. All right, then our painting day, we're gonna do a simple crayon morning. Again, if you've been here for our other seasons, this day, this kind of crayons in the morning is a nice way to end the week. So offer beeswax crayons, just let them free create, put out some drawing paper and let them create anything that they would like. And then our main lesson is color mixing. So in our previous week, Rainbow Week, we, used all the colors of the rainbow to create the rainbow. This week, we are going to intentionally create brown. So get your colors and experiment with that. You can sing that little part of Pearl instructing the fairies, red with green, orange with blue, yellow with purple too, and mix those colors together. See what happens. Now you'll want these colors to be pretty nice and vibrant to really get a neutral color. If they're kind of diluted colors or not super vibrant, it might just look gray. But the point here is that these colors are kind of canceling each other out. So even if it makes gray, that's still technically correct because they kind of cancel. But you can see what happens, and you can see the different shades of that kind of neutral tone that each pair makes, and experiment and see, really get children noticing what happens when you put two different colors together. So it's a really fun experiment. Of course, these ones, the final product is going to be messy and, just a fun experiment to see what happens as we mix colors in every way possible. So fun little color theory. All right, I'm going to take a sip. I'm going to let anyone ask any questions before we move on to Potato Week. All right, clear chat. Right, so Potato Week. This, of course, if you're following my spring planning shuffle, this might be pushed a little more into April after our Easter weeks, but I'm going to go ahead with March week 3, Potato Week. All right, so Potato Week is, of course, another rutabaga story. You'll notice that spring is rutabagas season. So a lot of rutabaga, each gnome is kind of represented by season, not only in their kind of cover, but in story as well. We really get to know each one even a little more through the season. So rutabaga is our spring gnome, he's a gardening gnome, and so lots of fun. We just get to know him very well this season, which is a lot of fun. So potatoes, after the potato harvest of the previous, our Clover Week story does end in a nice potato harvest for rutabaga. He had given some potatoes to Petty Pom, and he checks on Petty Pom and notices that Petty Pom is eating the potatoes raw and does not like them, which you can imagine why. And so rutabaga is like, well, have you tried cooking them? And so he then goes to show all the different things you can do with potato, because of course potato is rutabaga's favorite vegetable. It is also, fun fact, what he was born out of. So rutabaga was born of a potato. So he loves potatoes and he loves to eat potatoes. They were each born out of the thing that they kind of care for. So rutabaga is born out of potato. He loves potatoes. He loves to eat potatoes. He loves to grow potatoes. So when Petty Pom says, I don't like potatoes, it's like, you can do so many things with potatoes. So you have this song. We only have one. This week we only have one song, the Lovely Potato Song. It is a really fun one. And of course, if you also happen to be a Lord of the Rings fan, you might especially enjoy the lyrics of this one. It is a fun nod to Lord of the Rings. So potatoes, lovely potatoes. You can do lots of things with potatoes. And then of course he makes Petty Pom delicious potatoes, and He loves them. So they eat and enjoy potatoes together. So you have lovely potato songs. It's a really fun one, super easy one for kids to enjoy. And it's just lovely. All right, so we're going to start our week with cinnamon clove Play-Doh, which tends to actually look like a potato. So cinnamon clove Play-Doh will be familiar if you've been with us through winter and autumn. Otherwise, it's kind of one of our classic recipes. It's warm, it's cozy, it's just a lovely way to greet children in the morning. And then it's a great way to make potatoes because it does look like potatoes. Then we are going to start potting potatoes. So if you did read or watch, if you read my little spring planning tips in the book, or if you watch the spring planning, you'll know that we will be potting potatoes. So you will need seeded potatoes, which means an old potato with lots of little sprouts. So if you want to start planning that now, you can just leave potatoes on the windowsill. They'll do it themselves. Or if that's not possible for you, or if you don't plan ahead as far, you can also just get seed potatoes from a garden store, either one. But regardless, you will need some seeded potatoes, and then just get some soil. And this is a really fun indoor planting activity for children because the potato is so big. You can put it in, and it's not as little as some seeds, and then they can start to sprout. And then in a few weeks, when we do planting week, you'll get to put it in the ground. So do take a note of your own, your local climate and your planting zone for when things should and can go in the ground. But otherwise, we get to pot these potatoes and then put them on the windowsill and wait for them to sprout. So it's a great way for children to start caring for a little plant of their own. All right, let's see here. All right, great. Then morning activity for our baking day is peeling potatoes. So of course, this will need some guidance. We want to make sure our children stay safe and they're peeling away from their little fingers, but this is also a great skill for them to start to practice. So it's always good for children to become familiar with kitchen tools and have good respect for them so they know how to use them, and we can guide them through that and prevent injury while still letting them come alongside and prepare our food. And these potatoes will go into our baking recipe. So if I'm preparing for this day, I'm going to have them peeling the potatoes, and then the potatoes that they peel are going to go right in a pot of boiling water, and I'm going to boil them whole until they're fork tender but not completely falling apart, because I want them to see that whole potato, because that's going to go into our potato bread. So step one is our morning activity, peel the potato. Then while they're, if you're preparing cleaning up or preparing for circle time, those are going to go in the boiling water. Get those out, let those cool a little bit, maybe move on with your circle. And then when you're ready to come back for baking day, so yes, you're going to boil them whole, which I know typically if you're doing mashed potatoes, you chop them up, but you do want to boil them whole. I guess you can chop them if you want, but I like the child to see kind of a whole potato go into the bread. And I think the recipe for the child's portion, you'll do a half a potato. You don't need a whole one for the child's portion, but I love them to see a real full potato go into their bread. So you're going to boil that whole, peeled but whole, and then let them cool down a little bit. If you're doing the whole full portion, you'll use a few more potatoes. If you're doing the child portion, you can cut one in half. And then I like to put it in their little bowl with the foamy yeast. So did I get ahead of myself? We're making potato bread, if I didn't say that. So we're making potato bread for our main baking day activity. And so we're going to boil those potatoes to prepare for our potato bread. So before your lesson, you want to boil your potato. You'll also want to get your yeast foamy. So active dry yeast, you want to kind of activate with the warm water and sugar and yeast and let that sit until it's foamy. Now, typically when I do yeast bread with children, I do the whole dough process beforehand, and then I present it to them as after the first rise where they're just punching and kneading. It's very simple and a lot of fun. This time, however, I do want them to see the potato go into the bread. That's kind of, seeing from, especially since they just got to see a potato go in the ground, really see what you can do with a potato and see how when we boil a potato, we can even put it into bread. So the process here is going to be a little bit different. It is going to be a little messier, a little stickier. So just kind of mentally prepare that this is going to be more hands-on, because the process of taking kind of a yeast mixture to a full kneadable dough can take some time and care. So just have some extra flour ready and just kind of mentally prepare yourself that it might be a little bit more of a messy baking day, right? So you're going to take that foamy yeast, you're going to take your boiled potato, either large or half, and you're going to have your softened butter, all of these things, and you're going to give them a little masher, and they're going to mash that potato right into their bread mixture. Then they're going to stir, they're going to add that all together and mix their bread, and then add your flour until you can get to a kneadable dough. Knead the dough, let it rise, and then carry on with your recipe. All right, so a few more steps involved, but I do love having them see a full potato get mashed into their dough mixture, and then you get to eat a lovely, delicious potato bread, right? Someone said we're currently ice painting with his body, so we're familiar with mess. Yes, embrace the mess when you can. It is discovery, it is childhood, it's a good thing. But just prepare mentally that potato bread might be a little messier in activity, but it's good because they get to see really what happens. All right. Then our painting day, we're starting off simple, offer some beeswax crayons, and then our painting day, we're going to do wet on wet painting with just green. So you can pre-mix some green if you're using the Stockmar blue and yellow, or you can just use a green palette, however you would like to present. But this does kind of go along with kind of St. Patrick's-ish, which if you are shuffling, this potato week this year might get pushed after Easter into April, but regardless, it's spring, it's green, so we're going to just let them really experience green on the paper. And one thing I do love about just offering one color at a time, because sometimes it's like, why just one color? That's boring, right? Instead of them getting to see different hues and colors working together on the paper, they really get to just soak in that color and see the different values on the paper, where you get a little bit of light green here and then more pigment is dark green, and you just get to see the color for what it is. It's kind of a whole color experience. So offering one color, especially for our little ones, is just a really simple way for them to just kind of get the hang of painting and get the hang of color and really experience that color truly for what it is and all the different values and shades as they paint on the paper, rather than just a million colors at once, And of course, previously in our Clover Week activity, the whole goal was to make brown. But sometimes, with just one color, even a 2-year-old can create a beautiful painting with just one color, something you can use for cards or activities, because just one color on the page is just beautiful. So I really do love when we just offer one color, even to older children, to see what they can do with just one color. All right, and that wraps up our potato week, and then we're going to finish off with the Spring Festival. I'm gonna take a little sip of water. And we'll finish out March. Now, again, if you listen to spring planning, you might be scooching this one up a little bit to align a little more with the equinox, because this spring festival is kind of how we celebrate the coming of Lady Spring and the spring equinox. This is a star turning week. So this is where we're going to turn our star to green. Hooray! Spring is finally here. So we're going to turn our seasonal star. You can do the Seasons Come, Seasons Go dance and song that's on the September album or early in the autumn album. And I always like to sing a little kind of more reverent verse while I turn the star. So for spring, I would be turning my star and singing, "Seasons come and seasons go, with our star we turn to show. The winter king has gone away, Lady Spring is here today." Yay! So turn our star, celebration. And again, if you're familiar with our curriculum, you'll know, or if you watch spring planning, you'll know that we tend to culminate our kind of festival day on day 3 of our curriculum. So if you're just joining, I would probably wait to turn the star on day 3 when we have our snacks done. That's when the celebration culminates, and we turn our star and welcome the new season. And it's always a sweet day. All right. So spring festival week, we are going to start off with our story, The Spring Ball. This is a lovely story, and there's some funny parts and also just some lovely festivities that are really lovely. So the Spring Ball is how the gnomes and fairies are honoring and celebrating the coming of Lady Spring and the beginning of springtime. So the Spring Ball is how they celebrate, and so in the first part of our story, Hamilton hears Lady Spring's song and the fairies singing Lady Spring's song. And then they begin to prepare for the spring ball. And Hamilton, of course, still new to Wondergarten, has never attended a ball. He's never really danced. And so Thumbkin has a little dance lesson with Hamilton, Morrison, and Rudabug. And it's kind of funny because Rudabug and Morrison are, big clunky men, and Thumbkin is teaching them all how to waltz. So we have the song Waltz with Me, and Thumbkin is teaching them how to waltz so that they can properly waltz with the fairies for the spring ball. We have a funny little story about what had happened in previous years when Rudabug stumbled. So we have a dance lesson, which is also fun for children to kind of learn the steps of a waltz. And then, of course, we end with the spring ball. And one of my favorite songs of spring, Spring Has Come. Beautiful, all of them dancing and singing together. And it's just a beautiful way to honor the coming of spring. Nathaniel says, based on true events. Yes, when Nathaniel lived in Japan, he did teach other Marines how to dance. So he was teaching other men on their own how to dance. So this is based on true events. I have a few chat boxes here that I want to catch up on. Living in Wisconsin, March can sometimes be snowy. So yes, you might have to tie in Snow Queen and Lady Spring might still be friends. In Florida, we don't have seasons. Of course, you'll have to adapt as you need to seasons if you're still in a cold area, if you're already in a warm area. But it always is fun to still honor the seasons wherever you live. So we have 3 songs this week. So as I mentioned, pick your fave, pick which one you want to focus on in circle time. Of course, you can enjoy all of these songs all week long, but for our circle time, we want to reduce to first verse of one song. I love to do I think it's in our circle time section. If you go back to the circle time section for spring circle time, the Lady Spring Wake Up Flowers game is one of my favorite circle games. So you use the Lady Spring song, and if you have even a few siblings or a little group, you can have one child be Lady Spring, get a bunch of colorful play silks, and the children can just hide and be asleep under their colorful play silks. And then Lady Spring comes to wake up the flowers, and she'll tap each one, and then they get up and they dance together, and then they repeat, and all the flowers go back to sleep, and then another child gets to be Lady Spring, and it's a really, really sweet circle game. So this week I usually always do the Wake Up Flowers Lady Spring circle game. You sing and play that song kind of just on repeat, and it's a really simple one, but children love it because they love to just be the little flowers and wait to feel Lady Spring tap them and then get up. And of course, they all love taking turns being Lady Spring, waking up the flowers. So it's a really, really sweet one, really fun one to do with a group of children if you can. Then of course, Waltz with Me is a fun one to just get children kind of, learning how to dance simply. And then Spring Has Come is just beautiful. It's one of my favorites. It's so beautiful. So we just get to welcome spring. All right. So you'll see we have a little bit of a different organization here. Let me see. Am I getting one? Yeah. We are going to start our week with a craft because it is a 2-day thing. So usually we'd start off our week with kind of a simple modeling activity, but we're diving right into a craft here because it needs time to dry and assemble the next day. So we are going to be, Josiah, could you grab that little pot, the little pot of flowers? I should have grabbed that before. I'm going to show you how to make these little paper cherry blossoms. They are lovely. They're one of Nathaniel's favorite craft, actually, because they look so beautiful. Thank you so much. These are just lovely. So we're making these little beautiful paper cherry blossoms. And this again is a 2-part activity. The first part of the activity can be very child friendly. The second part is a little more adult centered. So again, I love when we can create something with our children. Everything doesn't have to be fully child independent for it to be nourishing for the child. So this is one that you can work with your child to create something that you both can enjoy. They're so pretty. They last, of course, all season. So it feels like you can just get cherry blossoms all year round. They're so pretty. So you'll see our first steps here. And the first day, your end goal is this little stack of tissue paper. So you'll take some tissue paper, cut out a little shape of cherry blossoms. I do have some tips on how you can cut that out, again, in bulk. So we have lots here. And then we have a stack of tissue paper, and you get to just use your red mixed, diluted watercolor. And if you just do a dot in the middle, the color will just kind of begin to spread and it'll soak through. You can flip it over and do both sides, but you just want a little bit of that red to just go through. And of course, then it'll become this beautiful pink, and you have still a little bit of white on the ends, and it's just really lovely. So the children can really enjoy this part because they can just paint and it just goes, and it's really, really lovely. And then you're going to set this aside for day 2. So this is step 1. I'm going to go ahead and just finish this part here so you can see how it comes together. The second step is going to be your day 2 morning activity where you pull this together to create this beautiful thing. But I'm just going to finish this activity so you can really see how it comes together, and then I'll go on with the other activities. So part 1 of the paper cherry blossoms is you make this little cherry blossom shape. Get your watercolor and get that there. And then part 2, now this is kind of the trickier part. So the way you want to get these on here is you're going to take your kind of fabric or wrapped floral wires, what I have here. I use this for a lot of things, all right? So you're going to take some, here's my end. You're going to take some floral wire, and this is going to become one of your branches, all right? Then you're going to take one of these wool sheets, and you can use your pinky or you can use a little child's finger, and you're going to put it over the top and just pinch it down. Okay, so we're kind of just doing this to the flower. Boop. And then you're going to take this like this and pinch it and begin to kind of twist and pinch the end. So what you want, now we can switch top down here. What you want is this little pinched end here that you can grab, okay? And at first you're just going to keep your petals all like this and just kind of twist so you have a nice kind of grabbing point for your wire. Then we're going to take this wire and we are just going to do a fold. So we're going to put it over and just fold it over and pinch that. Okay, so you can see how that just pinched that end and now it's already pretty secure. Then we're going to fold it over again and pinch again, and we're just gonna repeat until this feels pretty secure, and then you can start to really try to wrap it around if you can. But the trick is to do those 2 kind of flat folds and pinches to get that really secure on there. And then of course you can continue to wrap it around as many times as you're able to really get that secure, all right? And of course that just came off. So they do come off easily, so let me show you that again. The more you pinch, and you might wanna start even further. So I'll do that again to make it hopefully a little more secure this time. Fold it and just pinch it flat, just like that, and then pinch it over again. And then you can repeat a few times, and then there you go. Then the final step is you're gonna turn it and you're gonna gently just begin to open up your petals, find those petals, and really then kind of find your flower. And this kind of takes a little bit of care and, you know, takes a little time to just open up. So here's a little petal that I'm gonna open up here and just kind of fluff it. And then as you repeat, you can beautifully weave these together. So Nathaniel did this, of course, and it's stunning. So you can see here how these are woven together. I'm not sure. Oh. Okay, I'll do it this way. How these are woven together so you can weave together and kind of twist together a few strands of these, and then take a twisted strand into another twisted strand to really create a beautiful branch. So you'll want to repeat this a few times on each individual little stem, and then once you get another one, you can twist those together. I thought I had, do I have one more here? No, I thought I had another one. Anyways, so start with one, do a few more, and then when you twist them together is really when you get this beautiful, beautiful branch, beautiful tree. So yes, I'm not surprised Nathaniel did this. Clusters of 3 or 4, says Nathaniel, if you want to get it to look like this. So the trick is get that shape, get that little point, and fold that over, and then you'll get your little cherry blossoms. They're lovely. All right, any questions on that? I know there's a few tricky little things there. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much, but they're lovely. All right, so that is split into 2 activities, your morning activity of day 1 and day 2. All right, then our main lesson, we're back to day 1. So main lesson for day 1 is flower potting. So head to the garden store, get whatever flowers you can. I do love doing actually like bulbed flowers instead of cut flowers. So daffodils, crocuses, things that you can pot or plant in directly in the garden, depending again on your zone. In where we live, and for our little classroom, I would put them in little pots and then send them home with the kids to then plant in their own gardens. So if your choice, if you want to put them in pots, or you could put them directly in your gardens, but get the kids planting flowers to some degree as you're able, depending on what on what you have around in your area. Of course, everyone's going to have different flowers available in every different climate. So use what you have. And then, of course, that second day is finishing our cherry blossoms. And there's kind of those same instructions there. And then our baking, we're doing these lemon raspberry scones. These are lovely. They kind of end up looking like little spots of pink flowers in your scones, and they're just really, really yummy. If you liked the orange scones of winter, you'll love these as well. They're super yummy. So scones can be a little trickier, a little more challenging of a baking day, but it is worth it. Get one of those pastry blenders and work in your butter and bring them together. A trick is you do want to keep your butter cold. So if your kid, especially with kids, sometimes the butter can get overworked. That's okay, but just expect that they might kind of spread a little more. I would suggest chilling your scones before you put them in the oven. But otherwise, they're a really, really delicious one. You have a lot of different things you can, they can zest their lemons, they can juice their lemons. The raspberries are best frozen, so you can get frozen raspberries, or you can just get raspberries and then freeze them, because that helps keep the whole thing cold, keep your butter cold, keep everything cold. So frozen raspberries are definitely recommended. If you can't find pre-frozen, you can freeze them yourself. So just a little note in your planning, prep ahead. And then we are going to finish with beeswax crayons for our morning lesson here. Very simple. And then we're doing cherry blossom paintings. This is one that you might want to just do a little bit of prep. I like to use a brown block crayon to just create a little trunk for them, and then some diluted red paint or some pink paint if you have it, and they can just create little cherry blossom trees. And of course, then this is the day that we're turning our star, we're having our scones, and we're kind of also having a little spring festival to honor the coming of spring and the cherry blossoms and the beginning of our season. All right, then we move on to April. All right, that wraps up March. Any questions there on March? I will be back, of course, in a few weeks for our April overview to cover everything April, and I'll make sure that that is early enough so that you have the Easter activities before you actually need to shuffle those at the end of March. But otherwise, March is a really, really fun month. It's a really great start to spring. You get to greet the fairies, you get to know Rudabug even a little more, some really fun things, starting to get involved with gardening. Really, really sweet. So if there's not any questions, March Play Silk, we are waiting to hear back from Sarah Silks. We got our samples, so we know they're in the works, but we're still waiting to hear back from Sarah Silks on when exactly those will be available. So we'll be sure to keep you updated. A lot of that is just kind of a wait and see for us as well, so we still don't know. Someone says, we started your Wondergarten journey last year with spring and it's so fun. Oh, I'm so glad you all are here, and I'm so glad you are still here. I really do think that if you stay with us for a few years, it just gets better and better each year. It just gets sweeter because the children just get even more, then it becomes tradition, right? It's super sweet. So I do see a few folks typing, so looking forward to it. It's so lovely. It really is beautiful. All right, and as I'm allowing any last questions to come in, just a reminder that we do offer these videos for you all for free, but if you would like to help support us, because they are not free to do, we do have those 3 levels of community sliding scale support at $5, $10, or $15 a month. So if you want to find those and upgrade your plan, that's always super, super appreciated. Of course, you're always welcome to stay on the free plan. We just want you to be here and enjoy these. But if you think these are helpful, we would love your support. We also have our ambassador program. If you'd like to become a top supporter of Wondergarten, see what's happening behind the scenes, that group is kind of my go-to group for brainstorming new products. And we'll also be doing seasonal ambassador meetings where we'll get to actually chat on Zoom and let you guys know what we're working on. So if you'd like to support in a bigger way, those are available for you as well. Spring is my jam, says Ellie. It's super fun. So, all right, lots and lots of new fun things. Can we see the back? Oh, this chalkboard, the back chalkboard? This is our Wondergarten chalkboard. I don't know if that's what you're asking. All right, sweet. Thank you all. I'll be back before too long for our April overview. Oh, in the back of the book, that's our April board. So I'll touch on this one next time. So come on back for the April overview. All right. Okay. If there's no other questions, replay of this will be up before too long. Thank you all for joining. Always love a good turnout. Always love to see you all here. It means a lot to me. So we will be sure to keep an eye out for updates for our spring sale and any new products coming. Otherwise, thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.